Trent McDuffie says this defense is in a better spot now than it was a year ago, but there still has to be growth. How does that happen today? I'm Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. It is a whole nother week as we go through OTAs, and we have a great show for you. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New users getting $150 back in bonus bets for winning a $5 bet. Just $5. That's $100, $150 back for winning a $5 bet at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can get started right there. It's shifting right now today to the defense. We've been talking a lot of offense lately. We're going to cover where are they relative to last season when they were able to really step forward and claim what they were doing. We're going to talk about that today here on the Locked On Podcast Network, part of the Locked On Network, where we're free every single day, 5 days a week here on YouTube, plus on audio at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get a free show. You can get us 5 days a week and then some. If you want that bit more, we'll drop some bonus episodes, and you can get on our text line for all you locos that are here every day with us at 816-357-8781. He's Chris Clark over at Chiefs Corner. You can get all of his writing rundown, quarterback stats, cap, the whole 9 yards at Chiefs Corner. Go subscribe over there. I'm Ryan Tracy from Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL33.com, where I look at the rest of the league that's trying to catch up with Kansas City, as well as RGR Football, where we break it down even more. Today, the backfield in the defense is good. Obviously lost L'Jarius Sneed. Where do they need to change and grow? What do the linebackers have to do, and what's the focus for them? Those are coming up next, but we start right now, which what I think is the building block of every defense, and that is getting after the passer. It comes down to a lot of guys that have been in rotation that now need to take that rotational role up a notch. Whether that's still the same volume of snaps or not, it has to be more productive. So I'm looking for an on-snap basis of how many times you can pressure the quarterback and how many times you can get home. Pressure rate and finish rate, that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, and they have largely the same crew that they had last year, minus Charles Omenihu, who they're probably going to miss. I would imagine he's going to miss some of the games. He was not active in practice. He's still coming back from his ACL injury, suffered in the playoffs. So we'll see whether or not he's able to start the season. But they didn't have him early to start the season last year, and it's just a question of can they grow into where they need to be? Can they get after the quarterback more? Because it's going to be different when we look at the amount of time left by the DBs covering people, which you mentioned Sneed's gone, and we're going to talk about the backfield later. But the backfield is going to affect what the front line has to be able to do. The front line has to be able to get pressure quicker because there is not going to be the same level of coverage as there was last year.
Yeah, they work together. If you make the quarterback hold the ball because the defensive secondary is on top of their job, it allows the defensive front to get home. The defensive front can get off to a great start, quick first step, or exploit a gap. It allows them in the defensive backfield to be better in position to take the ball away. It is a full team effort. And it comes into, I think in particular, a couple of things. You've seen George Karlaftis make some very good strides. He is the guy on this defensive front outside of Chris Jones that puts up consistent pressure and is amongst the best in the league in the top 15 at producing pressure per snap. It's everyone else's job to catch up to him, particularly Mike Dana, who I think is really played some great snaps for this team in the last 2 years and can play inside, outside. He is a veteran at this point, and he is a versatile player that can help you. He understands what he's doing and what he's attacking. I think those are the two guys to start the season. They're going to be obviously the number one and number two options. If something happens after that, who do you think comes in behind them?
Well, and we go back to what I said earlier. Omenihu's probably not going to play, so I would imagine it's going to be FAU, and that's going to be an issue of where is he at compared to last year. It sounds like, based on what we've heard from OTAs, that he's doing better than he was last year. He understands the defense better. But you're not really going to know what you have with him until you actually get in pads and you're able to hit people, because you're going to have to see what has he learned, not just necessarily from the knowledge aspect of it, but how has his technique improved? How has his body changed? And maybe that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it really is. Reality is, how much weight did he gain? How much, how has it affected his speed? How has he worked on his hands? That's what I mean when I say, how has his body changed? It's all of the little things that you have to work on. Karlaftis worked with Tom Bahali the year before, and I'm sure he probably is still working with him, but FAU worked with Tom Bahali this offseason. That is a great sign going forward. Tamba may not be, he's obviously not the player he was because of the age, but he still knows how to hand fight, and that was one of the best things that he was able to do. And he learned a lot from his martial arts master. I can't remember the guy's name and what martial arts specifically
Master
it was,
Kim.
but Master Kim. Okay. But there was a lot of work there, and teaching that to these young guys, teaching it to Karlaftis, teaching it to FAU is going to make a big difference. And you talk about Mike Dana really quick. I'm glad that they re-signed him to a 3-year deal. He is a known quantity. You know what you're going to get from him. And the bigger thing with him is when we talk about pass rush, it's usually going to be DNs, but he can break down inside and rush from inside. So can Karlaftis. Those two guys are going to help a lot to be able to have a variable defensive front when you're getting after the passer on third down.
Yeah, absolutely. Malik Herring's a guy that's also in depth that reminds me a bit of Dana, that can play a little bit of both, but he's not exemplary at either. Without Felix's progression, if he isn't able to really take a huge step forward, there are two other guys that I think are options we have to keep in mind, and that is B.J. Thompson and Truman Jones. Looks like he's come back in better shape, a little bit more explosive. Looks like he's spent the offseason getting prepared to compete. I like the options there because there's a varied group of outside edge pass rushers. You can do a number of different things. That is going to have to be, again, another rotation. Who can step forward? It's going to be about the young guys stepping up.
Yeah, and it's going to be curious to see what you got from B.J. Thompson, what you got from Truman Jones this year in the offseason, what they were able to do, how they were able to change, and how they were able to grow. And again, it goes back to what I said, almost the same as what I said about FAU. How did they change over the offseason? How did they grow because we didn't see him play. We saw FAU sparingly. We didn't even see these guys really play at all after training camp and preseason games last year. So it's going to be a question of what did they learn in practice? How much has their technique changed? Have they shown growth? Have they put on more weight? What are they going to be able to do? We'll find all that out at training camp. It's one of the fun things that I have always loved about training camp is being able to watch those one-on-ones that these guys get in with the offensive line. It's always fun to see how people change from one year to the next.
And they better keep changing because things are changing all over the defense. What do the linebackers have to do differently, better, or in addition to what we've seen before? Linebacker level coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Playoffs are in the air, both in the NBA and the NHL, but the NBA is starting to really get fired up. If you want to get in all the action, there is a way that you can play a bigger role. All these events come down to getting the right spot in the right venue at the right time. You can browse all the upcoming NBA playoff and finals games and the high-profile events that you're looking for right on the Gametime app. You can be specific about where you want to sit. You can take a look before you even have to make a purchase, and you can get last-minute ticket deals all the time, up to 60% off of sports, concerts, comedy, theater, anything that you're looking for. It's all in pricing, no surprises, and you can look at that seat before you even consider pressing the button. It's all at Gametime. You want to take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets or any playoff or any event, you can do it at the Gametime app by downloading the app, creating your account, and using our code LOCKEDONNFL. It's going to get you $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply, but all you have to do is create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off of your first purchase. It's at Gametime. It's last-minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it's guaranteed.
As a golfer, for years, I've been hearing PXG say, nobody makes golf clubs like they do, period. You know what? They're right. I actually went in for fitting myself, and I actually saw for myself what they're able to do and how their golf clubs work. No matter how good the tools, getting fitted can take your game to a whole new level, and they'll even give you a dozen golf balls free just for doing it. The world-class team of PXG experts will analyze every aspect of your swing with every club and give you feedback in real time on how to improve. The one-on-one experience of being able to go in and actually try these clubs for myself, get an idea from this one-on-one coach of how I can improve my swing, how I can use their clubs to my advantage is priceless. It is awesome. You have to go try this out. It is something that is great. The grips are amazing as well. There's lots of different grips you can try for the different clubs. You have to go check out PXG. And if you're thinking PXG's high performance equipment is too expensive, their clubs often cost less than the so-called leading brands. PXG made me a believer. They'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Go visit pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City, 7517 West 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonchiefs and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/lockedonchiefs to schedule your fitting. pxg.com/lockedonchiefs. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per person. Promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details.
Defenses are multi-leveled. For that point, you got to have the pass rush. You got to have the guys that back up the pass rush. And this year in particular, when we take a look at the AFC West, not let alone the rest of the AFC, with the Baltimore Ravens, the Chiefs are going to see week 1 bringing on Derrick Henry, doubling back down on a thinner Lamar Jackson and a guy that really was best when he was an addition to the run game and they were able to cram it down teams' throats. That's what they want to do in Los Angeles with the Chargers now. They have to do that in Las Vegas because they don't have a functional quarterback at this point. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of run game coming at the Chiefs defense without Willie Gay, a guy that has chased down a lot of plays and be able to cut off a lot of wide zone, a lot of pitches. They're going to have to change the way that they do things. But this is right now a pretty veteran group, with Leo Chenal being the least experienced starter that now has 2 seasons under his belt and some quality backups. If they focus on the run, I think it sets up the rest of the defense to be able to withstand everything else, certainly in the division, but maybe in the AFC overall.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, and we've kind of alluded to this a little bit. Is it a question of, are they going to have just linebackers out there? We talk about, I mentioned linebackers, and that's what we're talking about, but are they going to have a Jaden Hicks play a linebacker type role? Are they going to move guys up and have them do different things at the linebacker level? And I do think that that's a possibility. You talked about Leo Chenal, and the thing that I'm excited about is he's going to actually, I think, be on the field more than he has been in the past several years. Obviously, year 1, he didn't play very much, and he stepped up in the Super Bowl and played a huge role in being able to win that game against the Eagles. And then you look at year 2, he did play a little bit more, but it still was limited because you have a guy like Tranquil that stepped in and basically took a lot of the responsibilities that I think that they were expecting Chenal to have before that happened. And now you have him coming into his 3rd year. He's always been great getting downhill. He's been a very instinctive linebacker, and I do think that helps. And the question I'm going to have is, can they take advantage of having him on the field for running downs and keep him off for what he needs to be kept off for? Because I still don't think he's going to be anywhere close to what Willie Gay was in the passing game, and that could be a problem.
It could be. I do think he made some strides that way, especially in playing into the zones. But you're right. At this point, he is going to play, I think, a very functional role this season because of what has to happen in division. He's playing that Sam role, and you guys can look for it as you see clips from OTAs. It should be Leo at the Sam, Bolton in the middle, and now Drew Tranquil moving out to that Will position that Willie played because you need the wheels there, right? Say that 10 times fast. But when you take a look at not only what the Raiders were successful in doing last year in the run game, but particularly what Harbaugh's team at Michigan ran to the strong side of their formation better than almost any team in America. And I do think that is going to be a thread that follows him through to what he's doing in Los Angeles. And so it's going to come down to the strong side linebacker to take on those blocks, to set that edge, to be able to be more of a front player that is adaptable than like when Leo comes into pass rush and he's at a wide 9 and those kind of things. It's a little bit easier to understand where everything's coming from. In the traffic, I think this plays right into Leo Chenal's strength because he's comfortable in the A gaps. He's very comfortable in the B gaps. And this is back to, I think, what will be a role that's a little bit more akin to what he did at Wisconsin before he came out. The fact that the league is swinging back towards the run plays right into Leo Chenal's hands as far as I'm concerned.
No, it really does. And then you bring up Los Angeles, and it's interesting because they have Rashawn Slater as their left tackle. They just drafted Joe Alt, who's going to play right tackle. And now they just signed Alex Leatherwood to a contract. And you would have to think that they're probably looking for him to be an interior guy. That's a pretty large guy for an interior guard. But I do think that that's probably the direction that they're going to go. And all of that plays into having to stop the run against that team, which is interesting because you look at who they have as their quarterback and you would think that they would be wanting to throw the ball more. But it does look like Los Angeles is changing and trying to go more run heavy, which should open things up for Herbert, which we'll talk about the backfield here in a couple of minutes. But, it's just interesting to see. And you mentioned it earlier as well. Las Vegas doesn't really have a QB. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays into everything. And then you look at Denver when you're talking AFC West in general, and you made a great point about the Ravens with Lamar Jackson getting a little bit skinnier this year. I think he's going to be a force in game one. But you look at the Denver Broncos, they're going to have to protect Bo Nix. So you would have to think that they're going to be trying to rely on a running game as well. So stopping the run is going to be very important in the AFC West.
Yeah, it's becoming more of a thing. Now, I think the Chargers are going to go to a play-action heavy scheme because they did make an investment in Ladd McConkey in the second. They brought in Brendan Rice later in the draft. Obviously, you still have Quentin Johnson that you made a high draft pick investment in the year before. But the other guys on the offensive line, Jamari Sailor from Georgia, can play multiple spots on that line. I agree. Joe Alt should go in at right tackle and pretty much make that solidified. You have a first-round pick in Zion Johnson. That's their left guard. I would not be surprised if they put Leatherwood into a sixth O-line kind of thing and run jumbo at times as well. Play action snot out of it to the two guys that they think that can do the job. I think they rely on Josh Palmer a bit as well. But this is definitely something that maybe for the first time in the Reed era, the linebackers are going to have to pay attention to what the running backs are doing inside the tackle box, more so than they have in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot different than it has been in the past 3 seasons, and I'm curious to see how all the teams in the AFC West try to attack Kansas City, because you look at what Kansas City's done, and they've dominated this division for years, and now it's a question of how do you get back to a point where you can start beating the Chiefs again, and I think all 3 of the division rivals are going to be going in a little bit of a different direction. Herbert is going to have some play action passing, obviously. I don't know what the Raiders are going to do right now. Their QB situation does not make sense. They didn't go after and get one, and I'm really kind of surprised that they're still sitting there and they're planning on having Aiden O'Connell be that guy. That's a lot of faith to put in him. Yeah, or Gardner Minshew.
Either way works for me.
Right? Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes versus those 2 guys, you got to feel great. Herbert at least can get into the top 5 category. Those 2, O'Connell and Minshew are bottom 10 probably, I would think. And who knows where Bo Nix is going to end up.
In the AFC West.
Okay. Top 5 in AFC West. Thank you, sir. They're not going to be top 5 in the AFC, let alone the NFL. So it's going to be intriguing to see how this plays out this year.
Yeah. Linebackers can really, I think, step into that. I think you're going to have to play the pass still. The hook zones in particular are going to be important. But it allows you to set up the secondary to maybe cover a little bit more ground. And as you said, some of the new pieces that can play different roles. So where do we need to see the growth in the secondary? That's coming up next on the Locked On Podcast Network. It is absolutely winner take all, no holds barred time in both the NBA and the NHL. NBA finals are set. Still working on the NHL. Florida is now a minus 170 if you want to get into that action right now, playing the New York Rangers. That's the playoffs that I'm watching right now. And if you want in on it, NHL, whether it's NBA or NHL, FanDuel is going to give you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers are making $150 back in bonus bets for just winning a $5 bet on anything. That's money lines, spreads, props, whatever you're looking to get into, you can get in the action at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can make every single playoff shot count. Get yourself into the action at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, if you want even more coverage, you can hit the Locked On Sports Today feed 24/7 here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV and get what you need anytime, day or night. What I need is anytime a ball's up in the air, I need a chance to go take it away. The defensive backfield has been such a pleasant story for the last few years, and it only continues to grow. Obviously, with the departure of L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie is now the number one guy in this defensive backfield. Nothing against Justin Reed, but the two of them are to this point where comments the other day about just the fact that they understand where they're supposed to be, and even if they make a mistake, they understand how to play off of each other. That's growth that I don't think you're going to see from those two particular guys. I think what you're going to see is Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson, Brian Cook, who looks honestly in drills right now. He's not playing in contact or in team, but in drills, he looks very, very good in terms of the recovery from his injury. He's going to play a big role. Chamari Connor, we know, looks like he's going to get some nickel snaps here, along with Najee Johnson, Nick Jones. There's a lot of talent in the secondary, but where do they need to grow? Number one thing for me is recognition.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think it's interesting that all five of the guys that are going to basically be starting for you, including more than likely all five of the guys, have been here 3 years. Justin Reed, 3 years. This is his third year. Brian Cook got drafted with McDuffie and Williams and Jalen Watson, and Najee Johnson came in as well. So the main pieces of this defensive backfield have been together for all 3 years, and they're all going to know what they're going to do in certain situations. They're going to have a great feel for what they're going to do. And then you add pieces like Chamari Connor and Jaden Hicks. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch this backfield and see what they can do. And we didn't even mention Kamal Haddon yet. So that's another one. I mean, you're sitting here in a situation where you have all these different players that have basically played together for the last 3 years, and a couple of new guys that are coming in with specific skill sets that can step in and do different things. Recognition is going to be a huge key for the three corners. I'm not as worried about Reed, and I'm not worried about McDuffie, really. It's more a question of, can Watson and Williams and even Cook to an extent have the recognition that they need to have from the start of the season. And all three of those guys, I think, are going to be there.
Yeah. And if things stay the way that they have been, it looks like Trent McDuffie's going to be on the outside mostly. And Nick Jones, Chamari Connor are looking like they're the guys right now leading on the inside, knowing that Najee Johnson's coming back from an injury still. And so you can't press him in action. Same thing with Brian Cook, not starting at the safety spot right now, running with the twos. But as I talked with Matt Derrick last week, the Chiefs definitely have a type, and that continues to go down, whether it's Hayden, whether it's Battle, who's one of the better athletes of this group, whether it's veteran Kelvin Joseph that finally seems to have found a home in a system that works for him. They have a lot of talent. And so it's going to be about understanding the game as a whole. And that's why I think, honestly, somebody like Kelvin Joseph might have a slight advantage because they've seen it more. And it's when you put your style together with the scheme, it's about understanding where you need to go and being able to click and go based on the recognition. That's what has to happen.
Yeah, and you have to be able to react versus having to spend time reading. And we talked about this with Bolton a couple of days ago. When it comes to Bolton and his speed, it's a matter of he recognizes the play immediately, and that's why he's able to be so effective. And that's kind of what you're talking about here, is those DBs need to have the recognition of this is being set up because they're doing this, and they need to be able to hit it the second they recognize it versus having to try to figure out what's going on offense. And you have a young secondary. I mean, we're looking at a situation where four of your potential starters have been in the NFL for 3 years or less. When you're talking about 5 potential starting positions at the DB level, that's pretty crazy. Justin Reed is obviously going to be the elder statesman, but you're right. Trent McDuffie is the number one DB in the group. And it's interesting because McDuffie has talked about his level of familiarity with Justin Reed. And they saw a play, and I don't know the exact play, they didn't get into it, but they said they saw a play the same, and they both kind of, maybe there's a little bit of a mess up originally when the ball was snapped, but they both realized it almost immediately and got to the point where they needed to. And it was just a matter of them being on the same page, them being in the same system, and figuring out where they need to go. This is the time you need to be figuring out those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's recognition, run through, understand where you're supposed to be. Again, the advantage, Haddon battle a little bit behind the ball. Nick Jones a little bit only because didn't get a lot of playing time, but he got plenty of practice time last year. Nazeeh Johnson obviously didn't practice last year because of the injury. A lot of guys that need to just step up in that understanding and fitting in with the rest of the four guys that are going to be returning basically to their roles. And I do think by the time we get around to the season, I do think Brian Cook will probably likely be starting next to Justin Reed as well. So what do you want to see happen on this defense, and where do you think they need work? Let's talk about it.
I think the other question that I have is what happens when you start getting down to cuts. I know we're a long way away from that, but this is a roster that is very deep at the DB position. This is a roster that if they need to go and get another position, get somebody in another position, this is probably where they're going to be looking to trade somebody, because I do think that they have 6 corners and probably 5 safeties that can make this roster, and maybe even more corners than that, because we haven't talked about the kid from K-State. You mentioned Battle, who has great size. I don't know that he'll make the roster, but he's obviously a great practice squad player. And their newest draft pick in Haddon, you would think is going to make the roster, but with everybody else that's on this roster right now, and you, as you said, Nazeeh Johnson, who's coming back from an injury, who everybody said last year they thought that he was going to be challenging for a starting role as one of the CBs, as CB basically 3. If he's able to push Williams and Watson this year, this is a very, very deep group, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see them compete throughout training camp and through through preseason games as well.
Yeah, it's all going to have to come together, and they've got time. Coming up this week is more OTAs. Try to get that much more together on the same page, being able to work through. And we'll see if we have some lineup changes. We'll see if people are moving around. You're going to have a lot of shows with Chris. I'm actually going to be out for a couple of days, but when I get back, we're going to go over in depth what has transpired.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking to a couple of guys that know some of our draft picks very, very well in the next couple of days. So be looking forward to that. And we will have that covered. And then Matt Derrick will be on later this week as well to cover OTAs when they have media time. And as Ryan said, we have OTAs, I think, the 3rd through the 6th this week. And then next week after that will be mandatory minicamp, and then it'll be off to training camp. So a lot to cover over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Hope you guys are ready for it. Make sure that you like, sub, hit the bell here on YouTube, get out to Spotify, get out to Apple Podcasts, and subscribe over there as well. Thanks for your time and being with us today. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll be back as soon as I can. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Thanks for listening to us today. And Chris will be back with you tomorrow.